Trump administration proposes to scrap H-1B lottery system, floats new rules. We decode just how it will impact Indian applicants. Piyush Goyal's New York meeting went well. Sources add that further talks are likely, with a deal expected sooner than later. India slams Pakistan at UNHRC for bombing their own people in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, while misusing the international forum to hurl baseless and provocative accusations against New Delhi. And Trump makes major U-turn on Ukraine war once again, says Kyiv can win all of Ukrainian territory back from Russia. Here's a main top focus this Wednesday on India Global. The Trump administration is shaking up the H-1B visa system. Now, this comes just days after proposing a massive $100,000 fee on new applications. It now wants, in fact, to give priority to higher paid, higher skilled foreign workers. Currently, visas are handed out by random lottery system. But under the new proposal, viewers, applicants would be ranked by wage level. Higher earners would have better odds, potentially 4 times higher in some cases, while lower wage workers may struggle to even qualify for this system. Critics say it could hurt startups and limit global talent, while supporters are claiming it protects American jobs and raises standards. Now, with over 339,000 applicants last year for just 85,000 spots, the change could very well reshape the future of US tech and immigration. Now, the proposal also, very importantly, faces a 30-day public comment window before becoming official. My colleague Priyanka Deo gets the latest.
Well, let's break down the Trump administration's proposal so far, because it's changing by day. And it could fundamentally change how global talent flows into the United States, or not so much. So right now, as we stand currently, every H-1B applicant has the same chance of being selected, whether they're earning $70,000 at a startup per year or $150,000 at Meta. Under this proposal, that would completely change. So each applicant's odds would be tied to their salary level. Candidates in the top wage tiers could get multiple lottery entries, while junior developers or entry-level workers may only get one, if any. This tilts the playing field towards established companies that can pay, sky-high salaries, and away from startups or research labs that rely on younger international talent. And over time, that doesn't just affect who gets a visa. It actually could reshape the entire workforce, accelerating a shift towards a more senior, higher-paid tech talent pool while shutting the door on early career professionals. And this matters because 70% of all H-1B visas currently go to Indian nationals. This program has been the single biggest driver of Indian talent coming to the US for over a decade, working in tech, healthcare, and research, and eventually becoming the most successful immigrant community in America. Critics argue, and rightfully so, that the lottery system has been abused. So outsourcing firms have been known to submit multiple registrations for the same worker, stacking the odds in their favor and crowding out smaller employers. So this wage-based rule by Trump is meant to stop that kind of abuse and prioritize high-value jobs.
Meanwhile, in a major boost to bilateral ties, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal met US officials in New York on the 22nd of September. Meanwhile, sources confirm talks went well, accelerating negotiations for a bilateral trade agreement. Agreement all of us, not only in India, but the US have also been very eagerly waiting for. Now, it's very important to remember here, US and India have been negotiating for a trade deal amid President Donald Trump's tariff threats. Let's listen in to the Commerce and Industries Minister, Piyush Goyal.
India is a big player in the energy field, as Pankaj just mentioned. We are big importers of energy from across the world, including from the US. We expect to increase our trade with the US on energy products in the years to come. and being close friends, natural partners, our energy security goals will have a very high element of US involvement, which will ensure price stability, which will ensure diversified sources of energy for India, and help us unlock limitless possibilities with the US on various fronts, energy and beyond. Another area where India and the US can work together, plan to work together, is nuclear power. It's an area that we've been talking of for a long time. There were certain elements which needed to be set right. And I believe we are working in India to support the private efforts on nuclear power.
Well, you heard the Commerce Minister there. My colleague Vishal Vivek also joins us for more on this. Vishal, what are the key sticking points, if you could inform our viewers, that still remain, the focal point of trade talks that are still ongoing? And a very jovial statement by the Commerce Minister there. Now to the million-dollar question, in fact, how soon can we expect a deal to finally be inked?
Well, sources indicate that there are some positive signs and that the first tranche of the deal could be signed as soon as the end of November. But all of that remains to be seen. So far, the US side has not commented on it officially. The fact remains that India is not willing to budge on certain points, such as dairy, such as access to the farmers market here, such as agriculture market access for the US side, which it has been quite hell-bent on, and Indian side on the other hand is not willing to relent. So that's sort of the pickle that both the sides need to get out of to arrive at a conclusion. But these are some really positive signs after weeks of back and forth between both the sides on several fronts. So we'll have to see what happens in the next few weeks, because we've seen in the last 10 or 15 days there have been 2 rounds of talks between both the sides, which seem to have stalled in the wake of these back and forth that I was just mentioning. So we'll have to see what happens in the next round of talks. Some sources indicate that while Piyush Goyal is in the US, there could be another round of talks with the US side. What happens then will also need to be looked at. So far, the US trade rep Jamieson Greer is yet to officially comment on Piyush Goyal's official visit to the US. There are some positive signs, as I mentioned. These are still early days as to the larger deal that both the sides have been trying to sign. But the first tranche of the deal will most likely be signed by the end of November, is what many sources are indicating.
The 3 key takeaways here, Vishal. The talks went spectacularly well, or very well. There might be another talks and a deal might be signed sooner than later. Thank you so much for getting us the latest. Shifting gears, but staying with the US, where President Donald Trump said Tuesday that Ukraine can win back all territory lost to Russia in a dramatic shift from the US leader's call on Kyiv to make concessions to end the war just a few months ago. Now, Trump offered his position in social media, posting very soon after meeting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, this was on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Trump in part wrote, and I'm quoting here, "I think Ukraine, with the support of European Union, is in a position to in fact fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. With time, patience and the financial support of Europe, and in particular NATO, the original border from where this war started is very much an option." Listening to Trump, followed by my colleague Natasha, who unpacks this latest flip-flop.
What progress do you think has been made on ending Russia's war against Ukraine since the last time you saw President Zelensky?
Well, the biggest progress is that the Russian economy is terrible right now. It's, as you know, it's crashing. And that, frankly, Ukraine is doing a very good job of stopping this very large army. It's pretty amazing. This is a war that should have ended in 3 days, 4 days. People said it was going to be very quick, and you got to hand it to the Ukrainian soldiers and everybody involved. It's still going on, and that's not a good thing for Russia. This was supposed to be quick, and it looks like it's not going to end for a long time.
Yes, a sudden and striking rhetorical shift by President Donald Trump when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. Remember, earlier, the president had said that he thought Ukraine would have to cede some of its territory to Russia in order to make this peace deal. He said that around the time that he hosted Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, in Alaska in August, where he really laid out the red carpet for Putin, who he had earlier called a friend. That seemed to have produced nothing really, because soon after those talks, Russia was back striking Ukraine, something that Donald Trump is clearly not happy about. He had boasted earlier of being able to end wars quickly, even as he was campaigning for the presidency. That didn't happen when it came to Russia and Ukraine. He was not able to leverage this relationship that he said he had with Putin. So now we're seeing a change where the president said that he actually thinks Ukraine is in a position to win it all back. A really big change, and it really shows the frustration that the president has now with the current situation, where he hasn't been able to crack the code in ending this war, his frustration with Russia. And he also expressed a lot of frustration towards the European Union, saying that they need to stop buying Russian oil. In his address to the United Nations General Assembly, which went on for about an hour, he again indicated that he thinks India and China are funding the war by importing Russian oil. And India has already said earlier that it needs that oil. In fact, they think that importing the Russian oil also helps the oil markets overall. In fact, some of that oil, which is imported by Russia and then imported by India and refined in India, then finds its way to the United States. Anyway, that's a lesser known fact. So going back to Donald Trump, a change in tone, a real effort by him to put further pressure on Russia, also threatening powerful sanctions possibly in the future. How this really impacts the Russian side remains to be seen, but for now, definitely a very probably pleased Ukrainian President Zelensky, who met with Donald Trump here in New York the same day as Trump's address in New York on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly.
Meanwhile, at the UNGA, President Donald Trump launched a scathing attack, this time not just at Russia, but at America's own allies and even global giants. He accused India and China to begin with of funding Russia's war in Ukraine through oil purchases, essentially ignoring the fact that Europe and even the US have continued trading with Moscow. Trump conveniently skipped over China when it came to tariffs, slapping India instead with heavy penalties. Now, India, in the recent past, as you might remember, has called out hypocrisy, reminding the world that it operates within international law, unlike Trump's erratic foreign policy. Now, that's not it, viewers. Trump's also blamed NATO for not doing enough, while offering no real plan to end the war he once called the easiest to stop. These are his words, by the way. Now, 3 years later, it's still raging, and so it's Trump's blame game. Here's Trump, followed by my colleague Parmeshwar Pava.
China and India are the primary funders of the ongoing war by continuing to purchase Russian oil. But inexcusably, even NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I found out about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy. Think of it. They're funding the war against themselves. Who the hell ever heard of that one? In the event that Russia is not ready to make a deal to end the war, then the United States is fully prepared to impose a very strong round of powerful tariffs, which would stop the bloodshed, I believe, very quickly.
Well, Donald Trump, chaos, contradiction, and controversy all packed into one day at the United Nations. On one hand, the US president stunned world leaders by suddenly hardening his stance on Russia, saying NATO should even shoot down intruding Russian jets, and that Ukraine should reclaim all of its lost land, which, by the way, is a remarkable 180 from just last month, when he shared warm optics with Vladimir Putin in Alaska. But then came the sting for India. In the same breath, Donald Trump accused both India and China of being the primary funders of the Ukraine war because we continue to buy Russian oil. Now, India has always defended those purchases as a matter of energy security, pointing out that Europe itself remains heavily dependent on Moscow's energy. Yet, the US president didn't spare NATO either. He called them hypocrites for buying Russian fuel while claiming to isolate Putin. Oh, and that's not all. He even repeated his long disputed claim that he played mediator between India and Pakistan. For the record, New Delhi has publicly and repeatedly rejected that narrative. So then what is really going on here? Is Trump signaling a genuine policy shift or just parroting the leaders he last met, like Zelensky and Macron? And closer home, should India actually brace for economic penalties like the threatened to have 25% US tariffs on Russian oil imports if Washington pushes harder? Well, at this point, just think about the irony. A US president calling India a war funder while American allies themselves keep buying Russian energy. Think also of the stakes, because Trump's words, however erratic, can ripple through NATO, through Europe, and yes, New Delhi as well.
Well, we'll be back after a short break. See you on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching the Wednesday edition of India Global. I'm Arjun Samad Mahendran. And viewers, India has exposed Pakistan at the UN Human Rights Council, underlining how exactly Islamabad has been bombing its own civilians in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and shielding terrorists at that. A fiery diplomatic face-off has unfolded with India pulling no punches. Here's the full report.
Perhaps once they find time away from exporting terrorism, harboring UN-proscribed terrorists, and bombing their own people.
In an explosive address at the United Nations Human Rights Council, India has called out Pakistan. It is not the first time, but perhaps New Delhi's sharpest language yet. Diplomat Kshitij Tyagi minced no words. The blast that killed over 30, including women and children, in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. India says that's no accident. It's Pakistan's military machine once again turning on its own. The airstrike reportedly used Chinese-made J-17 jets and laser-guided L-6 bombs. Their munitions were dropped in the dead of the night on a sleeping village. Islamabad claims they were targeting Taliban bomb factories. Locals and rights groups say this was a massacre.
The illegal occupation and focus on rescuing an economy on life support, a polity muzzled by military dominance.
He called the country's economy a life support system and its democracy military choked. But behind the speech lies a deeper message. India wants the world to see the hypocrisy. In response to protests erupting in Pakistan's Swat and Tira valleys, Islamabad blamed militants using civilians as human shields. But critics say it's a tired excuse. The real story? A state unstable or even unwilling to draw the line between fighting terror and punishing its own. Pakistan's military operations in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are neither new nor isolated. As the international community watches, one thing is clear. India has flipped the script, and this time it's Pakistan under the human rights spotlight.
Viewers, one thing is clear, as clear in fact as daylight, and it's Islamabad's uncomfortable truth is now in full view at the global stage, courtesy India. With civilian casualties rising and diplomatic tensions flaring, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa may very well just become Islamabad's biggest accountability test yet. And in a moment that has raised more eyebrows than expectations, US President Donald Trump met Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. Now, this encounter, described as informal, took place just after the Arab Islamic Summit and may be remembered more for its photo ops than any concentric or concrete policy shifts. Trump, meanwhile, focused on a far more pressing agenda, the war in Gaza. That's correct. He gathered leaders from across the Muslim world, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, and even others, for what he called the most important meeting of the day. Pakistan was present, but not pivotal. As Trump pushed for a ceasefire and blamed Hamas for derailing peace, Sharif's office claimed a conversation, quote-unquote, took place, but with no formal statements and no clear outcomes, even no visible role in Gaza talks. This may just have been yet another failed attempt by Islamabad to stay relevant on the world stage. And as global powers look to broker peace, Pakistan, of course, remains in the room, but it's barely at the table. My colleague Aditya Raj Khol joins us for more on this. Aditya, straight off the bat, was the Trump-Sharif meet more optics than actual substance? And more importantly, what message does it send globally?
Well, Arjun, Pakistan has been desperately trying to showcase itself as someone which is on the high table. But contrary to that, the facts say it all. The facts remain that Pakistan has been very desperately urging US to be on its side. In fact, the visuals after the Arab Islamic summit clearly indicated that the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan was desperately trying to show that there is some kind of a bonhomie between him and President Trump. But contrary to that, nothing of that sort has come out. There are no formal statements. There are no joint statements that have come out. And even Trump hasn't commented on his Truth Social or the social media about that particular meeting. About the Arab Islamic meeting, that has been quite a big move by Donald Trump, even though there is no roadmap as such for a peace process in Gaza yet. But the Indonesian president in the UNGA saying that he's ready to give his own troops for the peacekeeping force in Gaza is a big statement in itself. But he also has told the global community that there needs to be some kind of an assurance, some kind of a guarantee of security for Israel that has to be there. But on the other hand, Pakistan still remains isolated. You would remember the visuals that came out from the SCO summit on the sidelines where, in the Iron Brother country of Pakistan and China, the Prime Minister at that time was also completely isolated, even as the world spoke about the huddle between Modi, Xi Jinping and Putin. So here on the sidelines of the UNGA, Pakistan again completely isolated. And let's remember that while, Asim Munir and Shehbaz Sharif were desperately trying to woo Trump, their own citizens were being killed by their air force and military. So Pakistan perhaps is the only country in the world that uses helicopters and gunships and drones to strike their own people. More than 30 women, children and innocent civilians killed in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Protests raging all across in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. The reality remains that Pakistan may try to showcase its foreign policy, but its foreign policy is completely colored in blood of terrorism and human rights violations.
Well, thank you so much for putting the development in perspective for our viewers there, Aditya. Of course, we'll keep on following all the latest developments. Well, viewers, it's time. That's all we have this Wednesday. Take care and have a lovely day.